This video explains the procurement and conversion of 196 to 198 Church Road, Stockingford by the Nuneaton and Bedford Borough Council. It lists the questions I've asked, the lack of answers I've got, and the personal attacks from the Conservative Party councillors for me just asking the questions that need to be asked. I've called this a part 1 video because we're 15 months in and it seems nowhere near starting the conversion, and I hope it goes well. I mean, it's into video to attack the council for converting accommodation for temporary housing. It's for the lack of progress and the lack of actually a project plan, which is fairly fundamental and a mistake the council has repeatedly made. The project seems to have started in April 2021 with a delegated officer's decision, the council officer, not a councillor, to purchase the properties for a cost of £635,000. These things come through quite often, and there didn't at the time seem to be any issue with that. Then in October 2021 I sat on the Housing Scrutiny Committee and asked the Cabinet member what the progress was on the project. I'm really keen to chase projects up and make sure there was a proper project plan and a proper timescale so that we can actually hold the administration to account if projects aren't progressed in a timely manner and if the council's not using proper business planning tools. Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of questions to the housing portfolio holder. Firstly, we've got a very large purchase of I think it was a bed and breakfast in Stockingford we're converting to homeless shelter to supplement the town hall stuff we did, or council house stuff. Can the portfolio holder tell me how much that is going to cost to convert, what the timescales are, and what sort of rooms it's going to be? Is it going to be self-contained, small rooms, etc.? Or is it going to be sort of one big family thing like the council house? Thank you.
Can you narrow down which one you're talking about?
It was delegated authority in March. It was Church Lane, Stockingford. It used to be a bed and breakfast beginning with A. I can't remember the sort of Welsh-sounding name.
Yeah, I'll probably need to get back to you. That does actually predate my tenure. However, I will get the officers to provide you with a written response. I do know there is work going on, but off the top of my head, I can't tell you what it is.
In January 2022, the news reported about the guest house being converted into a house of multiple occupancy for 19 people to be used for short-term homelessness, and then it was reported in the paperwork for the full council in February that the tenders have come in far too high and the plans would have to be reviewed. At the February full council meeting, Michele asked about the project, its timescales and costs.
This is Michele Condacour. Brent, if you could read that out, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is a question for the portfolio holder for housing and communities. Homelessness, unfortunately, continues to be a problem both locally and across the country. So the news of an additional homeless hostel is welcome. I am concerned, however, about the finances of this. In the agenda, it states that item 11D.6.3, with regard to the homeless hostel conversion, that a procurement exercise has been completed with tenders exceeding the budget provision. The spec is currently under review, and yet in Appendix E, no further money has been allocated for the conversion. There seems to have been very little scrutiny, if any, of the decision to purchase the property and the necessary funds that would be required for conversion. What scrutiny of the spec put out to tender was there by members? How is the portfolio holder going to prevent this from becoming another Gresham Road, where the original budget allowed was obviously inadequate for the level of specification required? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Brent. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, first of all, I need to correct something that is incorrect, that we haven't bought a new property. This was an existing property. And what we did was we went to market with an idea of what we would like to do with that property. The tenders came back too much. We had a ballpark figure in our heads. It came back, didn't match. So we've gone away to rethink it. We've done this specifically to avoid another scenario where we start a project and then get leathered with costs. This is all part of a more corporate approach to things, which I will be discussing later on when I present my HRA budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Golby.
I next raised the issue of the conversion at the April Housing Committee in 2022, and the matter was also raised by the leader of the Labour group, who had put in the work item suggestion form.
Moving on to item number 6. Do we have any questions to Cabinet? Councillor Condacall.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got two areas of questions, one for Councillor Golby on housing and one on the environment, which will have to obviously be taken as a written question, written response. Can I ask Councillor Golby about her answer at full council last time about 196, 198 Church Road, Stockingford? In her answer, she said the council hadn't acquired this property recently. I've checked with the land registry and it is clear that the council has recently acquired these properties. One of the deeds is in October last year, so that's very recent. And can I have clarification of what the budget is for the refurbishment to convert it into temporary accommodation? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Golby.
I will provide you with a written response.
Fairly audible response was, I will provide a written response. Then later on the agenda we had Councillor Watkins' works suggestion form.
Item number 14, which is a work programme suggestion form. I will invite Councillor Watkins to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've put this on the work programme to see if you would consider taking it forward. And I thought it'd be useful if I came along, put a little bit of meat on the bones as to why. When this first came through, I'm not quite sure what documents you've had put forward to you, but it came through to me on the 14th of April last year, so next week sort of thing, last year. It's the first I knew about it, but it was a £635,000 spend on a property. It states in the delegated report that it was £635,000, Church Street, 14th of April, and it says ward relevance, Abbey, portfolio holder, consultees undertaken with Edda Regeneration Estates, portfolio holder, housing and communities. Well, that's not true because I didn't know anything about it until seeing this. Started asking questions about it then. Explained that it wasn't in Church Street because I was trying to think where it was in Church Street because Church Street's in the town centre. And then an amended one came out saying that it was actually in Church Road. Again, ward relevance, Abbey. Again, obviously £635,000. So I started asking questions about it because, like I say, I didn't know anything about it. £635,000 I think is a lot of money, and you'll see through the work programme sheet that I've put forward, and you will know from some of the training that we had the other week, that if you've got any questions on there, as in could policy be changed, should something be looked at, and then you should put it in so that a group can look at it. Obviously don't want to tell you what you should do about this, but there would be things that you could do, like a working group, task and finish group. I had asked the officers to look at another property down East End Road. That one was for 350,000, I think it was. So half the price, same ground coverage, same potentials. Now, whilst I was portfolio holder for housing and communities, I'd asked a number of properties to be looked at for temporary accommodation because we need to drive down the amount of people that we put in temporary accommodation. in between 20 and 30 a week, costing taxpayer a lot of money. So I'd asked a number of properties to be looked at, and every time I asked for something to be looked at, there was a criteria that I had to go through. So is it near a bus stop? Is it near a church? Is it near local shops? Is it near a town centre? Okay, fair enough, you've got a criteria to go through. So I always looked at them first. The one down East End Road, ticked all the boxes, close to town centre, close to town hall. And like I say, same sort of land available that was purchased down Church Road. Only Church Road is not really near the town centre. So the other questions that I was brought up on the work programme are what officer had the power to spend £635,000 off the taxpayers' money on a property. How quickly this went through, because as you've seen on the delegate thing, it's 14th of April that the members had it. Why it went through so quickly, the refurb costs, which I believe are going to be over £500,000, and the refurb time, which is something that you're going to need to be, keep an eye on. Is the refurb costs and refurb time. So basically, Chair, that's the reason why I've brought it forward, and also the property in East End Road had a lot more potential for, if land became available behind that land, and then there would be a good access road into it. I was constantly told that there was a better access road along East End Road, so I kept on questioning this, and I've only recently got an answer that it wasn't actually along East End Road, it was actually Aviemore Close, that the access road was better, not along East End Road. So I've asked a number of questions and still do ask questions, Chair. I'm not really getting any answers, so either a working group or a task and finish group could be set up, or you can just do it within this group, however you want to do it. But I just think that these are the sort of things that you could be looking at, but like I say, Chair, it's up to you and the group. But I thought it was necessary for me to bring forward, and necessary for me to explain that I didn't know anything about it until this came through as delegated authority. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions for clarification? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just speak on the item, if that's possible? It's the first. I looked at this afresh this evening, and I'm not entirely sure what the issue is, because to me, this looks like a sound plan and a sound decision from a director who clearly wants to get more single occupancy accommodation in the borough. Councillor Watkins will know, he's the former cabinet member, we have a housing crisis in this borough. We have a shortage of housing, particularly social housing. We have hundreds of people on our waiting lists, and we also have people who are currently in bed and breakfasts accommodation, which in turn has a financial cost on the housing revenue account budget. Now, based on the form that he submitted to this panel, the screenshot from the social media post confirms that this building is being turned into 16 single occupancy rooms as a HMO. So it's basic mathematics. 16 rooms, let's say each room is occupied every night. That provides 5,840 nights of accommodation a year. Let's say the average bed and breakfast costs £100 a night. That means the council saves £584,000 from its HRA budget each year. The cost of this building for the council was £635,000. So it's going to take about 2 years for us to basically pay back what we spent on this, which given the size of the building and the benefit it brings, that's a sound financial decision to make. To me, the way this is worded just looks like a witch hunt against officers, and that's not, we're here to scrutinise decisions. I was a cabinet member, as the committee will know, and when I was a cabinet member, I made it absolutely crystal clear to my director, Kevin Hollis, that if he was ever making delegated decisions as per the legislation, I wanted at least 5 days working notice that he was going to make that decision in order to consult with me. And if necessary, I'd always say that if it wasn't urgent, if I'm not content with what's being proposed, I want this to go forward to an individual cabinet member decision. Now, I'm looking at the date of this, 15th of April 2021. Well, Councillor Watkins was the cabinet member for housing on that date. So did this not come up in your weekly, I mean, you must have had weekly meetings with directors. Did this not come up in a meeting?
Councillor Shepherd.
I've got real concern that Councillor Evans is going into detail that if this went to a working group that we would be discussing there. So I don't think it's adding, I think it's adding more confusion. So therefore I think we should just move to a vote of whether it's going to go to a working party or we're going to discuss it as an item at another meeting. Chair.
It's a statement. Actually, it's going to save myself a job because I believe Councillor Watkins has just answered your question that you asked me before. He's just readily admitted it was on his watch, not mine. So I'm not going to bother with the email. I do have the financial information as well for the development. I will forward that on in an email. But I can say that it does actually provide some significant mitigation to the capital budget that we spend on housing homeless, so you are actually quite right there. So just to reiterate, clearly this was not on my watch. That's your answer. I won't be putting that in an email to make it absolutely clear, so there's no ambiguity about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think a large part of this isn't the purchase as well as it's a purchase and the refurbishment, because obviously when you buy something to do up, you have the doing up costs as well. And that is on Councillor Golby's watch, the doing up. And that is the bit we don't know the cost of because the contracts hasn't been let. So I don't think it's an important thing. We've made a massive underestimate of the cost of Gresham Road. And this is now a time to do a project where we actually look at things well, scrutinise them, have a business plan, because I do not believe there has been any discussion of a business plan for this refurbishment, even if it might cost £500,000. And so this does need looking at. It was October the purchase actually happened. The purchase was agreed by an officer in April. So there's a lot of questions to ask in terms of the timescales, the lack of business plan, which is what went wrong with Gresham Road, is we purchased a building without a robust business plan. So I'm really keen this goes to scrutiny. And I think Councillor Evans was talking at cross purposes because he was talking about the Heath End Road property, which is actually a sound investment. The Church Road investment may be a sound investment, but we need to do it well.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to what's going on here. I've looked at the paperwork. I've heard Councillor Watkins' explanation here, and I'm at a bit of a loss as to wonder whether this is actually the right panel to consider this, because we've well, is this an issue where process wasn't followed to do with the money side of it, in which case it could be to do with the finance scrutiny panel or audit? Is it to do with the fact that it's not delivering what it's supposed to deliver in the time that it's supposed to deliver it, in which case it would be for this panel to look at? And bear in mind, as as we just heard, the payback time for public sector projects of this nature is usually way longer than the projected timescale to repay this back, even including the refurbishment costs. So I'm not really sure that this panel is the right panel to be looking at this. And I do want Councillor Watkins to have answers to his questions. I just think that it should go through the correct panel. If it's to do with regeneration of a property and business aspects, is that the right scrutiny panel to go to? So I'm just not quite certain, regardless, whether this is the appropriate forum for this to be dealt with. And therefore, perhaps we want to take it away, look at where the most appropriate, what is actually the question, first of all, then what is the appropriate forum to deliver this in. And that might be, something that we come back to, rather than trying to guess what the issue is and set up a task and finish group or some sort of a panel to look at it separately, when actually we don't really know whether we are the appropriate forum, because it's not clear from the paperwork that we've had. Thank you.
Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure I'm not missing something here, but I think, Councillor Watkins, your question is how this all of a sudden landed on your desk in April last year, yeah, and you knew nothing about it on the prelude up to this, but all of a sudden you suddenly learnt that there's a £635,000 bill that someone's got to pay. Am I getting that right? And the fact that processes weren't being followed, could you come back on me, Chair, please?
Do you want to respond to that? 'Cause I agree slightly with Councillor Brown here that there's questions to be answered, that's fair enough. But I think also as well, if we can clarify the actual question, I think that then we can put it before the correct scrutiny committee. Because if it relates to the financial element of the purchase, I would say that the finance OSP is the better one. But if it also relates to the procedure that was followed, I don't believe the procedure is something that this OSP should look at. I think this OSP should be looking at if the building delivers what it says it delivers and if it's good value for what it delivers.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'll come back on a few of them. It's not a witch hunt at all. I can only see one witch hunt going on here, and that's the usual one. Like I said, this is a scrutiny panel, and from the training, I hope you did pick something up from the scrutiny panel. Yes, Councillor Downs, you are slightly right on that. That is some of the questions, but like I said, there are a few questions that I would like to ask. How quick, I think Councillor Conductor has just said, it happened in October from April. Why this one and why not another one? So, I've already said that I asked for another one to be looked at, which was half the cost of the one that was purchased. Why was that done? The refurb costs, I've been told they're over £500,000, and the refurb time. When is this going to be ready to take occupants price? So that's sort of part that you need to be looking at, and on this scrutiny is sort of the refurb costs, refurb time. Is it on track? Will it be delivered on time? Why this property? Why not the other one for the price of the taxpayers' money? They're the sort of questions I would expect to come out of a working group or a task and finish group. But you would only find them sort of questions when you start going into the nitty-gritty and finding out. And you'll sort of know when you sit down and start batting questions around about amongst yourself that one will probably lead on to another. But it will only be then that you're asking the questions that you find out the whole answers. But it's certainly not a witch hunt at all. It was just bringing it to your attention that this has happened, and I think we need to keep an eye on it, because if it is 500,000 that's got to be spent on a £635,000 building, so that takes well over £1 million, and you're going to need to keep your eye on that. The time, you're going to need to keep your eye on that, and they're the sort of questions, but it's up to you. I've put the work programme in. It's up to you guys. Thank you.
Councillor Condacall.
Just to add to that, my question has always been, is there a business plan and what is it? Because that is where we've gone wrong in the past. So if we are looking at a bit of scrutiny, it's actually have we set off without a business plan, or is there a business plan we can scrutinise?
Councillor Evans.
In answer to that question, the plans are on the planning portal. Alongside all the other plans, yeah. You type in the address and it all comes up. Yeah, including those, yeah. Just type in the address and it comes up on the website.
Any further questions? I think that we need to take this away and we need to dissect it. Councillor Watkins, if you would like to email me the questions that you would like the answers to, and then I think we need to take it under advisement, maybe have a conversation with the chairs and see if there's somewhere we can take this and where it sits. Is the panel happy with that?
It is clear that the Conservatives were just wanting to bury the lack of business plan. If you actually look at the planning application, it was for 21 units when it was submitted back in November. Clearly that had fallen to 19 when it got in the papers. It had fallen to 16 when it had a highway survey, and has now fallen to 14 units of accommodation. So a third of the accommodation has just vanished. With no sort of business plan, no cost benefit analysis. We never did get a proper written response from our April questions, and the planning permission was issued in June at the beginning of the month for 14 units, and the requirement was for one electric charging point per every 10 units. So there's 2 electric charging points in the planning application, and it was issued for a house of multiple occupancy. Then we had the June Housing Scrutiny Committee, and at that point I raised yet again the lack of response to our questions from the Cabinet Member for Housing. But the more substantial thing I wanted to mention was the minutes say that a written response will be provided to me about the long-standing issue of 196 to 198 Church Road, Stocking Ford. And later in that meeting, the Cabinet Member decided she wasn't going to provide a written response. That is not minuted, so I think it's useful to minute both the offer to provide a response and then the withdrawal of that offer. And this is an important issue because we've been asking about this for a long while. My wife asked about this, I think it was in February. I raised it in April. And this is a very expensive regeneration, which we don't want to end up like Gresham Road, which is why people are continuously asking, where's the business case and how much is it going to cost? So I hope you've got an answer for me. You did make comments on social media about what I said was a mistruth or something. So I'll be glad to hear what the actual cost is going to be for the refurbishment, and I hope you give me a reply opportunity if you say anything personal about me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kandaka. Well, I do have a statement to read to the committee. On the 15th of June, Councillor Kandaka issued a statement on Twitter stating as follows: the agenda for next week's HHE OSE meeting is out. Just chased up the matter from the minutes of the last meeting. Shockingly, the Cabinet Member for Housing has decided to refuse to provide the written response that is recorded as being offered. Late change of mind, not in minutes. Councillor Kandaka's comment is with reference to the questions to Cabinet section within the minutes. As Chair of the Committee, I wish to make it clear that the Cabinet Member for Housing did indeed provide a response to Councillor Kandaka's comments on the matter relating to 196 to 198 Church Road, Stocking Ford, and Councillor Colby provided Councillor Kandaka with an answer under item HEH 48, as can be seen in the minutes, and is well documented on the live stream of the video on YouTube. For this reason, I believe that the minutes are true and accurate, and it will be for the committee to ratify the minutes through a vote shortly. With respect to your first part, we've heard a lot on social media about 196 to 198 Church Road in Stockingford. Can you tell us what's going on with that? Can you provide us with an update?
So what you're asking is, can I put it to bed? Yes. Once and for all. And I would actually like to follow up on something that you've said, because I did not refuse to provide you with information. You were entirely wrong to put that out on social media, because I did not, under any... If you can find anywhere where I refuse to give you information that A, isn't already in the public domain, or B, hadn't already been answered through the course of that meeting, then I'll accept that comment, but actually that isn't true. So you were entirely wrong to post that. It's not fair, and you're wrong. So, not that fairness ever comes into it these days with you. So, the decision to purchase these properties on Church Road was made in April 2021, which is a matter of public record. There's two different properties that were purchased at the same time, 196 and 198. One was occupied when we went to purchase it. Completion on 198 Church Road was in August in 21. Completion on 196 was in January 22. There were delays, as pointed out by Councillor Kandaka several times, but that's what happens when people are actually occupying properties that you are buying, and there is a chain involved. So, property purchases with people in them never go smoothly. So that property that was delayed was actually occupied, and it was a vendor issue. It wasn't anything to do with us, and it wasn't anything to do with our staff, and it wasn't anything to do with the process. It was the vendor couldn't find anywhere else to live. And we're not going to turf people out on the street, because that's not what we do. So, in August to September, we started putting some designs together. In October, we put a scope of work out to contractors. December 21, we went to contractor procurement. November 21, actually, planning advised that they weren't happy with the proposals that we'd put forward, because we have consulted planning on all the way through this process, and we have been mindful of the fact that we want to make it as quick and painless as possible, so we've been consulting all the people that needed to be consulted at the points where it was expedient to do so. Planning advised that they weren't happy with the two-storey extension. So we went back to the drawing board on that. January 21, we put tenders out. We got the tenders returned, and they were coming in at around 20% higher than we'd expected, which was actually standard at that point due to inflation and market pressures. So we did some value engineering. We took the two-storey extension off. We did a redesign in February, and then we did final revision layouts that went to planning. Planning permission was granted on the 6th of June, just gone. So the total purchase price, again, matter of public record, is $635,000. The price for conversion, we're looking at between $650,000 and $700,000. This will provide 14 self-contained units. 3 are going to be fully accessible. And we're also going to be able to take pets, because you might not know it, but we actually have to pay boarding costs for people who are homeless and have pets. So not only do we have to pay costs for them to house them, we have to pay for their pets too. So it was thought, actually, let's have a good idea about this and bring pets into the equation. So it will save us paying for pet boarding. We're also going to provide an exercise area so the pets can be taken outside and exercised, because obviously you've got to think of the animal welfare on this as well. It's not just welfare of the humans involved, it's the welfare of their animals too. We also now have to provide 10 EV charging points because of legislation. We've got to put electric vehicle considerations in, so we've got to put 10 EV charging points in. So you should at least be happy about that. We've got to... We had to base this based on other things that had gone before, and there was something that was an alternative to this, which was agreed with the previous portfolio holder, which was to spend 1.2 million to purchase 9 two-bedroom flats from a developer, which was on a development close to the Bullring in my patch, which was interesting to find that out after the fact. and that was to be used for temporary accommodation, but that deal fell through. So this is why the Church Road properties came into scope, because we needed an alternative and we needed something fairly sharpish. So for payback terms, I know that the price is going to be scoffed at because you just know it's going to happen. But we look at a 50-year payback for viability purposes on these properties. When we actually worked what we could work in the way we could work it, we were looking on this project at not only providing as much support for our residents who are in the most need, but actually making sure that the taxpayer gets good value for money too. So instead of having a 50-year payback for viability, what we've worked on current finances is that when this is up and running, it will save the general fund around £460,000 per year. So the payback terms is actually under 6 years. So we've done a lot of work on this, and it really grinds my gears when I see things on social media and it's being labelled a fiasco. You labelled it a fiasco without any knowledge. There's been a lot of work gone on with this. We've covered as many angles as possible, and it's all been done by some really, really good teamwork. And I stand up here often and I always say the teams are working really well, and I have to say this is an example of that. So we're aiming to get on site July, August time with an approximate 6-month build. Approximate. And I'll caveat the cost and the build times with the fact that the market is volatile. So we're volatile on people in trades, and we're also volatile on materials and costs and labour. So, you know, there is going to be a bit of flexibility in this. I'm not going to stand here and say everything's fixed, but actually it might come down the other way. Who knows? So there are going to be some fluctuations to be expected. That's what I would put out there right now. I also stand by the decision, by the fact that this decision to purchase this property predated me. The decision to purchase was made before I got in post. And that is what was made out last week, at the last meeting. That became very clear because Councillor Watkins actually brought an issue to this chamber about the purchase, which clearly predated me, which is why I said I wasn't going to provide that answer in writing. Now, the other thing that you asked for, the cost, I did ask for that to be sent to you. Now, the fact that it wasn't sent to you is out of my control. It just fell through the gaps. But I did ask. So when you go out there and say I've refused to help, again, you were wrong, because I didn't refuse to help. I asked. And I would just sort of finish this off and just put it out there that maybe if you stopped making such inflammatory comments, it might ease the process of collegiate working, because right about now, it doesn't help at all. So, again, I want to say there's been a lot of good work done by people on this to deliver value for our clients and to deliver value for the taxpayer. And that is how I expect my teams to work. And I'm pleased to say that actually it's worked on this occasion. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to actually get this out there once and for all. And I hope it puts everything to bed, and we'll see how it turns out when the build is done. I'd be happy to invite you all around for a little show and tell. Thank you.
I tweeted out that we'd actually had an answer from the Cabinet member. We now know that the cost will be £650,000 to £700,000 for the conversion, and we now know there's 14 rooms compared to the original 21 on the weekly planning list or 19 on the newspaper report. So I think it's a fairly honest tweet, but after I left the meeting, the Conservatives decided to have another attack and start calling me names again. Very typical.
Are there any further items under AOB? Councillor Beetham.
Brilliant, thank you, Chair. It's just in regards to a tweet that a councillor has recently sent out just during this meeting. Just to bring some clarification, it's in regards to the conversation we had earlier about 196, 198 Church Road. And in it, it stated that that the costs are high and there's a cut to a number of rooms. But I'd just like to clarify from what we heard from Councillor Golby earlier that the reason for the decrease in rooms is because we were advised by planning, and we don't want to get into a situation like Medway Council where they're being advised to reject a Medway Council planning application about putting solar panels on the Medway Council property. So I just wanted that on the record. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beetham. And I think it's important that we actually come out and acknowledge those mistruths. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a statement I am entitled to as the portfolio holder with your discretion, which you just obviously granted. But yeah, I was made aware of the fact that Councillor Kandaka actually tweeted before he left the room that after 4 months we'd finally found out the expected conversion costs of the £635,000 196 to 198 Church Road, Stockingford, will be 650 to 700k, big cuts to number of rooms. Now, I don't know which part of we were advised by our own planning team to reassess what we'd put forward he actually missed. And this is exactly why this sort of thing needs calling out, because there's no context to what he's telling our residents. The context was made very clear that had we not amended the original plan, it wouldn't have got through planning, so we would have had no rooms available at this property because we wouldn't have been able to convert it. So what does this man actually need to hear before he starts telling people the truth? I don't know. And I'm not sure anybody else in this room can tell us. I'm not sure whether one of his colleagues can tell us, because honestly, this is beyond ridiculous. The constant officers are spending a lot of time constantly having to counteract things like this, and it's detracting from the job that they are actually supposed to be doing. And it's ridiculous, because next week he'll be moaning that we can't employ people, and it's probably because he's putting on about how poor the council is. Well, it all adds up. It's all circular, and he really, really does need to wind his neck in. Honestly, man's a cockalorum.
Well, look, as chair of the committee, I take on. I genuinely can't see what the issue is with this property on Church Road. From what I can see, the council is providing accommodation for potentially homeless people. When you look at the finances behind the project, we're going to basically get back our money within 4 to 5 years. It's normally about 50 years. I don't genuinely see the problem. And personally, as you know, if any member of the committee wants to take this forward, as chair, I'm probably going to have to rule it out of order, because I genuinely don't know what more information our officers can give. And also, I just think it's a waste of their time, when actually I'd much rather than be spending their time actually trying to identify properties in the borough that we can use for people who are legitimately homeless. But I mean, Councillor Beetham is right. I don't want to be in a position that Medway Council were in yesterday, where the recommendation on the report that has become a sort of Twitter sensation is that Medway Council planning applications committee is recommended by Medway Council to object to the application submitted by Medway Council. That's local government in 21st century Britain for you. And on that note, I don't think there's any more comments under AOB. So, Councillor Cape.
Coming new to the whole situation of 196 and 198, and the background to it being explained to me for the first time this evening, that if that tweet is correct, it's a misrepresentation of what I heard, because I fully understood the point that was made by others, and I would also support that such tweets should be sanctioned. My response to your point is,
I agree. I don't agree with Councillor Kandaka's tweet. I have been made aware of it. I don't believe it's true or factual, and I know that the council will go out of its way to try and correct the record, but I don't know why council officers need to keep on doing it at the end of the day. It's a waste of their time. It really is. It is genuinely a waste of taxpayers' money. And, you know, if the said individual is listening back home, I just ask him, it's not the first time. And when the said individual complains about staff who are leaving the authority, I wonder why. And on that note, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you.